Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this episode of One-on-One. I'm Martin Falls. Very interesting guest lined up for today's program. Jerome Boykin, the president of the NAACP for some 28 years now here in the area. But it's more than the NAACP. Where was Jerome raised? Where did he go to school? What makes him tick? What makes him laugh? On this show, we're going to go beyond the NAACP and find out more about Jerome Boykin. Don't go away. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. You said you and Dut would go ring the doorbells and run. So you said he was a little faster than you, but obviously you got to have a little speed to get away from the watchful eye of the person opening the door.
Right.
Did you play sports? Because Greg was involved in all kinds of sports.
No, I didn't play any sports. And I mean, Greg played sports throughout his young life, up until adult and, being with the, in the NFL.
Right.
The years that he was there, but Greg have always played sports. But no, we was best of friends, and I didn't play sports in schools. We'd throw the ball on the street, and we had a little team, in the neighborhood and stuff where, we would play and all. But
you talked about your siblings. Were you the mischievous child in the family, or were you the straight-laced one? Which one were you?
I got along good with my mother. I was one of the good ones, she felt. My mother had 6 children.
Yeah.
I was the 3rd oldest child. And I had a excellent relationship with my mom up until her death.
Right.
She would call all the time. We would talk all the time. So, and I was glad that I had that relationship that I had with my mother.
Now, you said you were in the 3rd grade when your dad passed, but what's your recollections of your dad? Was he also somebody involved in the community a lot? He had to be if he was trying to change the makeup of the schools.
Right. My father knew everybody in the community. He was a licensed barber, so he knew everybody in
Barbers
the community.
knew everything.
Right, and he got along with everybody in the community.
They have a feel for everything that goes on. They hear everything.
It's amazing. You're right about that.
It's like when people go in the barber shop, they think they're talking to their priest.
Yeah, you're right.
Or their reverend or whatever, but they just let it all hang out, huh?
Yeah, back in that area, I can tell you, his barbershop stayed packed, full of people. So he was one of the top, if not the most top barber in.
Did he do it by appointment, or was it one that you just go in there and you sit down?
Just go and sit down, you wait your turn.
So while you're waiting, there's a lot of talking.
You're right about that. People talking. And I would go there and sweep up the floor, the hair and other stuff and clean up, at the barbershop. I ran different little jobs for him, to go to the store and even get me some cigarettes or go do this or go do that.
Was that your first paying job?
I would say yes.
How much you make?
Wasn't much, whatever he gave you.
Whether it's a quarter, $1, whatever. Huh?
Yeah. When you talk about paying job as a kid, one of my jobs as a teenager, I worked with a guy by the name of Louis Miller. He was the educator in Terrebonne Parish. Yeah. And what Mr. Miller would do, he would buy houses, sell them, or rent them. And I live approximately 5 houses from Mr. Miller. Greg and I, kids from the neighborhood, we would all go there and he would hire us to go to the houses and paint and cut grass and do stuff. As a child, receiving money, getting paid, I would make the money and take the money and bring it home to my mom. And one thing I learned from Mr. Miller, and I am glad to say he was a part of my life from working for him, what I learned as a businessman, I used to ask him a lot of questions. We would be together and he'd buy a house and we'd go there to work. I would ask questions you're not supposed to ask, but as a child, you don't think all of that. I would ask him, Mr. Miller, how much did you pay for this house? Mr. Miller, how much you gonna sell it for? He would kind of nonchalant just be nice, to me and all. And, as I got older, that's where I got my concept from, dealing with houses. I'm the founder of Boykin Enterprises. We have over 40 properties, houses, and apartments. But that's where I get my concept from, Mr. Louis Miller. Because he had over 60 houses and apartments in his town.
But obviously, before you became the president of the NAACP and the light was put on you for a lot of different things that took place, the work ethic had been set.
Right.
So do you remember the first years you were dying to get out of the house and go get the lawnmower, go around the neighborhood, cut grass, make some money? Was that like a burning thing in you?
As a kid, I always wanted to work. At 12 years old, I had my own paper route in the neighborhood. It was the Houma Courier.
Right.
And I established the first paper route in the neighborhood. I would go to people's houses and ask them, do you want to subscribe to getting the Houma Courier? And I end up with a list. And I mean, every day I'd get on my bike after school and with my basket, roll my papers, because they would deliver the papers to my mom's house. And for years I had my paper route.
That was a wanted job by a lot of, I wanted to have a paper route, but the Coles down the street had a monopoly on it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people wanted that paper route. You make a little money.
I made my money, man.
Was it per paper?
And I look forward to it, yes.
Yeah.
You
remember that old movie where they knock on the door? I can't remember. Is it Ferris Bueller's Day Off? I'm going to ask my crew to, where they knock on the door and say, $2. You know, what is it?
Better off dead.
Better off dead.
Ain't that something?
I knew my crew would know, but you had to be on time. You had to get your paper right out, because if somebody was missing their paper, they weren't happy.
Right.
And you had to be a salesperson.
Right.
At 12 years old.
You had to be able to communicate with your customers. And my thing was to make sure my customers was always happy.
Yeah.
If someone said they didn't get their paper, I always made sure I went back and brought another one, even somebody had taken their paper.
It's funny you would say that, because those paper routes were, that was good jobs.
Oh, talk about.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
If you were not working as a teenager, you didn't want to work.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And like I said, with Mr. Louis Miller and all of the kids in the community would work for him, it really more, it taught me a lot. And basically I looked up to Mr. Miller. A lot of guys in my neighborhood, they look up to a lot of the basketball players, a lot of the football players. But I was able to look up to someone that I can see every day, someone that would give me money from working for them. And I remember when Mr. Miller bought 10 or 15 acres in Gray. It's a wooded area, and he cleared it off to build his 2-story house. And I'm in the truck with him, and we pulling up to the house. And as a kid, man, I'd say, wow, look how big this is. I said, Mr. Miller, you know what? He said, what, Jerome? I said, one day I'm gonna build a house bigger than your house.
So
and guess what? He never
standard.
forgot that. He never, 2 years before he passed, he brought that up to me. He said, I told my wife back then that out of all of the kids that work for me, I believe Jerome is going somewhere. And she said, why you say that? He said, because he would ask me all of the questions, just all the time. He's the one that asked me all of the questions.
You were the inquisitive one.
Right. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I also told him one day, he came to me, he said, you're doing good with the rental property. I said, well, thanks to you. I said, but one thing I have to do. He said, what? I said, I have to beat you. He said, what you mean? I said, how many houses you have? He said, oh, it's over 50. I said, I tell you what, one day I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna have over 50 houses.
So he sort of set the goal for you.
Right. And I had a good relationship with Mr. Miller.
You were able to get over the barrier. You said as a young kid, there was name calling and all that. When did you sense, and obviously as president of the NAACP, there obviously were still problems, probably not as focused as when you were a child, but there still were problems. But when did you sense that it was starting to shift a little bit for the better? Did it ever get to that point when you were a child in school?
Yes, like I told you, when we went to integrated school and the problems we had with the name callings, as the year went by, it got less and less. And you're exactly right about that. When we first started out, it was only the four of us. The girls didn't have a hardest time as the two boys, Nolan and I had in school. We had to fight every day. And as time went on, some of the white kids came on our side and would help us fight the other kids. And the crowd got bigger on our side as time would pass.
And do you
And by the end of the school year, it was better than the beginning of the school year.
And I could sort of, I'm trying to visualize that, because if I put myself and I see you and Greg Harding and different people in school, it's not going to be long before your personalities sort of become obvious to even the white students. If you hang around long enough with y'all, there's going to be some laughs.
Right.
So there's probably a moment where everybody, either you said something funny or Greg said something funny and everybody laughs, and I'm sure some of the white students at that point are going, well, this ain't that bad.
We broke the ice. It started off rough in the beginning, and by the end of the school year, it did get better.
That had to be, or feel a lot easier on y'all when you sensed it was getting better.
Yes, it's also a life experience. It's also something that you will never ever forget in your lifetime.
That's what your mama was telling you all the way through, no doubt about it.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
You get in the wreck, and basically your career as a deputy is over. Is that when the wheels started turning about, what am I going to do now? What am I going to get into now? Is that when you started the rental houses, or was that done while you were a deputy?
No, that was after the accident, and you're absolutely right. After that happened, I said, what I'm going to do? And I thought about it. I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start investing in housing and doing like Mr. Miller did. And that was my goal. After the accident happened, that's when I created. Also, I'm a founder of another business. It's two businesses. Boykin Enterprise, like I said earlier, that deals with rental property. And also we have JB Sweeping Service to where we have these vacuum trucks, and we do big retail malls. And we have a truck that goes to Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Houma. We probably do about 25 Walmarts a night. We have approximately 10 employees. But both of my sons is running the company. I basically oversee, what's going on.
You're the big man now, huh?
Well, I try to have to do that.
So wait, how do you get the seagulls out the way at Walmart? If some people go, where do these seagulls come from? I go, well, if you drop enough
Come to
French
see
fries
food.
in the parking lot,
And they come in
they
there
get
to eat it.
smart.
You're right.
But I don't know, it seems like you don't see them. And one lady told me she couldn't even see any birds, and she put some food on her hood, and she said within seconds they were all there.
Right.
I don't know if they have some kind of code, or they sitting on the roof, or they whistle down to somebody or whatever, but so you got to deal a little bit with everything when
Right.
you're doing that.
And one of the other things that I knew that I had to do, becoming president of the local NAACP, I had to be more independent. I had to create businesses for myself, because you can't do what I do and work for someone and be strict and open and fight issues, because it don't work out as good. So I made it a goal to be independent so I can speak truth to power.
Yeah, that was a juggling act for you. If you're working for large chains and you go up there as the president of the NAACP and you say something they disagree with, you could lose a lot of stores.
You're absolutely
So you're always juggling.
right.
But in the end, conviction sort of holds true, doesn't it?
Right, always. And that's what I did for both of my boys too. Matter of fact, I tell people all the time, I send my kids to college, not to go to work for someone else, but to come to work for me and go to work for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what I instill in my kids. And that's just the way I did it. For other people, it may be different, and that may be their style. But my style was to make sure that I have my kids to go and get the best education they can, come back and work for the company.
Are you strict like your mama was?
Not as strict.
Okay.
Not as strict as my mother.
You a little softer?
A little softer.
The head of the NAACP is soft on his kids? But no, I mean, you ever see those commercials where we become our parents?
Yeah.
And it's so funny, and they'll say something, and I see myself sometimes saying the exact same thing my dad would have said or my mom would say, and I'm going like, boy, did that come from Eugene or Lorraine?
Yeah.
But we are our parents, aren't we?
You're right.
Are you more like you know, your mom raised you so long, so it's probably an unfair question, but heredity has a lot to do with personality. But from the stories you hear about your dad or your recollection of your dad, are you more like your dad? Are you more like your mom, or are you more like your grandmother?
I can clearly tell you I'm more like my mom.
Okay.
Without any doubt whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even people tells me that.
And people come to you for elections.
Yeah.
Now, what did you take from that when somebody's running for office and they come visit with you? What do you tell them that would be exactly what your mother told them?
What I've always learned from my mother, even as a young boy, is when you're talking to people and they come to you, you always want to be honest, even if you tell a person something that they don't want to hear.
Right.
The main thing she always taught me, be truthful, be honest to people. However you feel, you tell them exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
Don't tell people one thing, then do something else.
I've always known you like that. And just for total transparency, we haven't always agreed on things, but
We had a couple of fights. Huh?
yeah, but we're sitting here laughing today. And I've never taken anything personal with you because you never did.
I never did.
Yeah,
No.
you never did. Just you're convicted about a certain thing, but doesn't age take care of a lot of things?
It's
as
amazing.
you get older.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who have had some real hot arguments
Yeah.
with, who have later became friends of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you sort of see past that, and I always blame it, especially with men, on testosterone when you're young. Everybody wants to make their mark, and everybody's, driving this point home. And as we were young and looking at the older generation, we could see them sort of mellowing out.
You're right about that.
Now, as we get older, we're mellowing out, and there's a young group coming up. They want to rule the world. So you just sort of look back and sort of
And say,
watch,
boy,
enjoy
wow.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to say my wife, I married Mara LaRoche
Yeah.
from Smith Ridge. And now I have 3 grandkids. I have 2 boys and a girl, man.
Yeah.
So life
That'll
passes
mellow you
by.
a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.